The first time I saw the blood on my husband's clothes, I lied to myself. I told myself it was nothing serious. Maybe it was engine oil. Maybe it was mud from the road. Maybe it was one of those dark stains that only look worse at night. I wanted to believe anything except the truth my heart was already trying to tell me. My husband had just returned from one of his so-called business trips. He always called them business trips, but he never explained what kind of business took him away for days without warning. He would simply say, "I'm travelling," pick up his bag and leave before sunrise. No destination, no full explanation, no date for return. At first I accepted it, the way many wives accept things they do not fully understand. I told myself that marriage teaches patience. I told myself that peace in the home sometimes means not asking too many questions. But that night when he came back, something felt wrong. He dropped his bag near the door, but he did it carefully, almost too carefully, as if the bag was carrying something fragile or dangerous. His shirt had dark stains on it. Even in the weak light of the room, I could see them clearly. I stood there, looking at him. He noticed. "Go and sleep," he said. His voice was calm, but his hands were not. His fingers shook slightly as he pulled the shirt away from his body and folded it quickly. He did not let it touch the chair. He did not leave it around like dirty laundry. He pushed it deep inside the bag like a man trying to hide something before it could be seen properly. "You think too much," he added. I nodded and said nothing. That was how I had survived in that marriage for years. Silence, carefulness, watching my words, choosing peace even when peace felt heavy. So I went to bed, but sleep did not come. My eyes were closed, but my mind was open. I kept seeing that shirt in my head, the way he held it, the way he avoided my eyes, the way something inside me tightened the moment he stepped into the house. I turned from one side of the bed to the other, but rest refused to come. Then, sometime in the middle of the night, a smell woke me up. It was thick and sharp. Not the smell of food, not rubbish, not smoke from someone cooking outside. This one was darker. It sat in my throat and made my chest feel tight. I turned to my husband's side of the bed. Empty. My heart started beating fast. I sat up and listened. The whole compound was quiet, but that smell was stronger now. It was coming from outside. I got up slowly so the bed would not make noise. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving. I followed the smell through the back door, each step small and careful. And then I saw him. Behind the house, near the old drum we used for burning trash, my husband was crouched beside a small fire. The flames were low but steady. He was feeding clothes into it, one after another. My breath caught in my throat. His shirt was in his hand. Even in that dim light, I could see the stains clearly now. They were too dark, too thick, too real. Blood. Not something that only looked like blood. Not maybe. Not perhaps. Blood. I stopped walking. For a second, I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him whose blood it was. I wanted to ask what kind of business leaves a man with blood on his shirt and fear in his hands. But my voice did not come out. It stayed trapped somewhere inside me. He did not even turn when he sensed I was there. "Go inside," he said quietly. No surprise in his voice. No fear. Just that same cold calmness. "I'm just burning old things." The fire cracked softly as the cloth folded into itself. I stood there, frozen, watching the flames swallow whatever evidence had come back with him. And for the first time since I married him, something became clear inside me. The man I was living with was hiding something terrible. I went back inside without saying a word. That night, I did not sleep at all. By morning, he was acting normal, too normal. He washed his face, stretched his arms, and greeted me like nothing had happened. Like I had not seen him burning blood-soaked clothes in the middle of the night. I studied his face while serving breakfast. He looked peaceful, clean, almost gentle. That was the part that frightened me most. A guilty man should look guilty, but my husband did not. He looked like a man who had done something many times before. The days before his next trip were worse than usual. Any small thing could upset him. If the food was late, he got angry. If our son laughed too loudly, he frowned like the sound offended him. If a cup was not where he expected it to be, his whole mood would change. It was like something inside him was always boiling, looking for a place to spill. One evening, he shouted because the drinking water was not cold enough. Another day, he pushed a chair aside so hard that our son jumped and ran behind me. That child was only 4 years old, but even he had started to notice the change in his father. "Mummy," he whispered one night, holding my wrapper tightly, "Daddy is not happy." I looked down at him and forced a small smile. "He is just tired," I said. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Children may not understand everything, but they feel things deeply. Sometimes they see what adults are trying hard not to see. And my son had become quiet. Too quiet. Whenever his father entered the room, he would stop whatever he was doing and watch him carefully, like a child trying to understand whether the man before him was safe or not. That broke my heart. I wanted to protect my son, but I did not even understand what danger I was protecting him from. All I knew was this: the money my husband was bringing home no longer felt clean. The blood on those clothes was not ordinary. And no honest work should need fire before morning. A few days later, he left again. He woke up before dawn, bathed in silence, wore a dark shirt, picked up his bag and headed for the door. "I'm travelling," he said. That was all. No destination, no explanation, nothing. I stood at the doorway and watched him disappear into the darkness outside. When my son came back from school that afternoon, he dropped his bag and looked straight at me. "Daddy has gone?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Where does he go every time?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. What could I tell him? That I did not know where his father went? That I was starting to fear the man I had married? That every trip seemed to bring back something dark into our house? So I simply looked away and told him to wash his hands for food. 2 days later, my husband returned. This time, it was the money that unsettled me first. He came in carrying a black bag tightly in his hand. He did not let it leave his side. He smiled too hard, like someone acting out happiness instead of feeling it. "This is the breakthrough," he said. "Our suffering is over." He placed the bag in front of me and looked at me in a way that almost felt like a challenge. "I work every day to keep you people okay." I forced a smile, but my stomach was already turning. When I opened the bag slightly, I saw bundles of money packed tightly inside. Too much money. Not money that comes little by little from honest hustle. This was the kind of money that enters a house and removes peace from it. I carried the bag to the visitor's room and left it there. But even after I stepped away from it, my mind remained with it. That night, after he fell asleep, I could not stop thinking about the bag. I told myself not to go near it. I told myself to leave it alone. But something in me kept pulling me toward that room. Quietly, I stood up and walked there. The house was silent. Even the air felt watchful. The bag was still where I had left it. I stretched out my hand and touched it. Immediately, my whole body went cold. Not normal cold. Not the kind you feel when touching metal or water in Harmattan. This cold went deeper. It passed through my fingers and entered my chest. I froze. Then I felt it. Something moved inside the bag. Slowly, gently. Like something hidden under the money had shifted on its own. I pulled my hand back at once. My heart started racing so fast I thought I would faint. Then from the bedroom, my husband's voice came loudly through the silence. Don't touch what you don't understand. My knees almost gave way. I turned toward the door, my mouth dry. How did he know I had touched it? My love, where are you? He called again, his voice softer now. Before I could answer, our son suddenly started crying from his room. The sound hit me like a rescue and a warning at the same time. I hurried out of the visitor's room and rushed to him. He was sitting upright in bed, breathing hard, his eyes wide open in the darkness. I carried him immediately and held him to my chest. It's okay, I whispered. Mummy is here. But then he held my arm tightly and whispered something that made the blood drain from my face. Mummy. It moved. I stared at him. What moved? He swallowed and looked toward the corridor. The bag, he whispered. I saw it too. For a moment, I could not breathe. My son was trembling in my arms. He was only a child, too young to understand fear properly, yet old enough to feel it. I wanted to tell him he was imagining things. I wanted to tell him it was just a dream, but I had felt it too. I had touched that bag with my own hand, and whatever was inside it was not ordinary. I kept rocking him gently until his breathing slowed, but my own heartbeat only grew louder. Then I heard footsteps outside. My husband's footstep. Heavy, slow, certain. He did not come into the room. He walked past us, straight toward the visitor's room. I sat there in the dark, holding my son, listening to every sound with my whole body. The door to the visitor's room opened, then closed, then silence. A long, terrible silence. My son had started drifting back to sleep in my arms, but I remained awake, stiff with fear, staring at the darkness. Because for the first time, I knew this was bigger than blood on clothes, bigger than strange money, bigger than a husband keeping secrets. Something had entered my house, and whatever it was, my child had seen it too. Absolutely. I did not sleep again that night. Even after my son became calm in my arms, I remained awake, staring into the darkness like it could speak. My ears stayed alert to every little sound in the house, the movement of curtains, the slow cry of insects outside, the faint sound of my husband's steps earlier. Everything felt louder than normal. My son finally drifted back into deep sleep, but I could not let go of him. I held him close for a long time, pressing his small, warm body against mine, like I could protect him from whatever had entered our home. But deep inside me, I knew something had already changed. The fear was no longer in my head. It was in the house with us. After some time, I heard the visitor's room door open again. Then I heard my husband's footsteps walking outside. I waited. I counted slowly in my heart. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. I do not know what pushed me, but after a while I carefully laid my son back on the bed and stood up. My legs were weak, but I forced myself to move. I stepped into the corridor slowly, making sure my feet made no sound on the floor. The house was dark, but I could still see enough. The visitor's room door was slightly open. I looked inside. The bag was gone. My throat went dry immediately. He had carried it out again. I turned toward the back of the house and followed the faint smell of smoke. When I got close enough, I stopped behind the wall and looked into the yard. My husband was there again, just like before. He had lit a small fire. Not big enough to draw attention, just enough to burn what he wanted burned. Beside him was the black bag. I watched as he opened it carefully and removed things one by one. Clothes. More clothes soaked in blood. He threw them into the fire, slowly, almost respectfully, as if this was a serious routine he had repeated many times. My stomach tightened. The flames rose and curled around the cloth, swallowing the dark stains bit by bit. The smell that came out was thick and disturbing, not ordinary smoke. It made me want to cough, but I pressed my hand to my mouth. He kept the money aside. That part was what made everything even worse. He burned the bloodied clothes, but not the money that came with them. So the money mattered. The blood did not. Or maybe the blood was the price of the money. I did not know. I only knew that no clean money comes with fear, fire, and midnight secrets. I stayed hidden until he finished. When he stood up and picked the bag again, I rushed back inside before he could see me. I returned to my son's room and lay beside him quickly, forcing my breathing to become slow. A few moments later, I heard the bathroom door close. Water started running for a long time. Then I heard something strange. My husband was singing, softly at first, then louder, then softly again. The sound was unsettling. It did not sound like a happy song. It sounded like a man trying to wash something from his spirit, not just from his skin. A man praying without kneeling. A man begging without using words like, "Help me." I pulled the blanket over my son and stared at the wall. When my husband finally came back to bed later, he smelled fresh. Too fresh. Like strong soap and perfume had been poured over him until every trace of smoke and blood disappeared. He lay down beside me without saying anything. I kept my eyes closed, but I knew he was awake. I could feel it. His breathing was steady, but not deep enough for sleep. It felt like he was listening, waiting to see whether I would speak first. I said nothing. After a long while, maybe close to morning, sleep finally took me. But what came to me was not ordinary sleep. It was one of those dreams that feel more like a warning than rest. In the dream, my husband was standing in a wide, empty place. There were no houses, no trees, no road, just open ground and darkness around him. He was not alone. Several men stood around him in a circle. Their faces were hard to see, as if shadow covered them on purpose. But I could feel the weight of their presence. They were silent, yet the silence coming from them was heavier than shouting. Something was lying on the ground between them, covered with a red cloth. At first, I thought it was only an object, but then it moved, slightly, like something alive was underneath it. My heart started beating fast, even inside the dream. One of the men spoke. "Your turn is next." The voice was low and cold. My husband did not argue. He did not run. He only nodded, slowly, as if he already understood what was expected of him. Then he bent down and reached for the cloth. I tried to scream. I knew I was about to see something terrible, something I would never forget if the cloth lifted. But no sound came out. My mouth opened, but nothing followed. Just fear. Raw, freezing fear. Then I woke up. I sat up at once, breathing hard. My whole body was cold. The room was dark, but something felt wrong immediately. I turned to my husband's side of the bed. Empty. Again, I touched the mattress. Cold. Not recently cold. Gone for a long time cold. I looked around the room, confused and tense. Where was he? Had he travelled again? Had he gone out before dawn? Was he outside burning something again? My mind rushed with questions, but none of them gave me peace. After that dream, I could no longer pretend that this was only my imagination. Something around my husband was dark, whether it was crime, cult, blood money, or something worse. I did not know yet. But whatever it was getting closer to me and my child. I could feel it. I got up and went to my son's room. He was already awake, sitting quietly on the bed. He was not crying. He was not sleepy. He was just sitting there, too still for a child his age. He looked at me when I entered, but he said nothing. Something in his eyes made me uncomfortable, not because he looked evil. No, because he looked like a child carrying knowledge that did not belong to children. "Good morning," I said gently. He nodded. I moved closer and touched his hair. He leaned into my hand, but his face remained serious. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. He shrugged. That alone unsettled me. This was a boy who normally asked questions every morning about breakfast, about school, about why the sun was bright, about where birds sleep. But this morning, he was quiet, like someone listening to another voice inside him. I wanted to ask him about the bag, about what he had seen, about why he said it moved. But fear stopped me. Something told me not to pull open a door if I was not ready for what might come through it. So I simply helped him dress for school. I bathed him, ironed his uniform, packed his small lunch, and tied his sandals, while my mind stayed far away. He let me do everything without his usual playfulness. Even while eating breakfast, he was silent. Once or twice, he looked toward the visitors' room. Each time he did, my chest tightened. When it was time to leave, I decided to take him to school myself. I did not want him staying in that house any longer than necessary. The walk to school felt strange. The road was the same. The people were the same. Women sweeping their front yards, children in uniforms, keke drivers calling for passengers. Life was moving normally for everyone else. But for me, the world no longer looked normal. Everything felt like a cover for something hidden underneath. When I dropped my son at school, he held my hand a little longer than usual. "Mummy," he said softly. "Yes?" He looked at me for a moment, then shook his head. "Nothing." I forced a smile and kissed his forehead. But as I walked away, I knew it was not nothing. On my way back home, my legs felt heavy. Part of me did not want to enter the house again. Part of me wanted to run somewhere, anywhere, and not return until my husband came back and everything explained itself in a simple way. But life does not give answers that easily. When I entered the house, the silence met me first. No sound from the kitchen, no sound from the bedroom, no sound from outside, just stillness. Then I saw it. A thin line on the floor, dark red. My breath caught immediately. Blood. A small trail of blood started from the bathroom and stretched faintly across the floor toward the visitor's room. For a few seconds, I could not move. I simply stood there, staring at it, hoping my eyes were mistaken. But no, it was blood. Real blood. I looked around the house quickly. My husband was nowhere to be seen. The front door was closed. His shoes were not there. But nothing looked packed like someone preparing for a trip. No travel bag, no message, no sign that he had properly left the house. It felt like he had disappeared in the middle of something. My mouth went dry. I wanted to run out immediately, but something stronger held me there. I began to search. Bedroom first, bathroom next, kitchen, living room. Every corner, I checked under the bed, inside wardrobes, behind curtains, near the back door, in every place my eyes could reach. My hands were shaking as I opened drawers and shifted things. Nothing. No body. No weapon. No clear answer. Just that thin blood trail and a silence that kept pressing against my ears. I stopped in the middle of the sitting room and held my chest. What had happened in this house? Was he injured? Did someone come in during the night? Did he drag something to the visitor's room? And why was that room, now, the center of every strange thing? I walked toward it slowly, then stopped. I could not open that door. Not yet. Something inside me refused. It was not only fear, it was something deeper. A sense that once I stepped fully into that truth, my life would never return to what it had been. So instead, I went back for water and a rag. I cleaned the blood, slowly, carefully, wiping the floor as though I was wiping away proof that this nightmare had entered my home. As the red stain faded from the tiles, my hands kept shaking. I hated myself for cleaning it. But I also knew something else. If my husband realized I had been investigating him, I might lose my only chance to understand what was happening before it swallowed us. So I cleaned everything. By the time I finished, the floor looked normal again. But I did not feel normal, not even close. I sat in the living room after that, too tired to stand, too afraid to rest. The clock on the wall kept ticking loudly. Every few minutes, I checked the door. Then the windows, then the time again. I tried to cook, hoping ordinary work would quiet my mind. I washed rice, cut vegetables, lit the stove, stirred the pot. But my thoughts kept circling back to that blood trail, from the bathroom to the visitor's room, from one mystery to another. By afternoon, it was time to pick up my son. I locked the house and went for him. When he saw me at the school gate, he ran into my arms, but he did not smile. He held my hand tightly all the way home, like he was afraid I might vanish if he let go. Inside the house, I served him food. He ate quietly, too quietly. No complaints, no play, no stories from school. Children do not become this silent for no reason. I sat opposite him and watched him closely. When he finished eating, he wiped his mouth and looked straight into my eyes. "Mummy." The way he said it made my chest tighten. "Yes? Where is Daddy?" I swallowed. "He travelled," I said. He shook his head slowly, not like a confused child, like someone correcting a lie. "No," he said, "he did not travel." A chill passed through me. I leaned closer. "What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "If Daddy does not come back in 24 hours... He stopped. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "Something bad will happen." My lips went dry. "What bad thing?" I asked. He stared at me without blinking. Then he said only one word. "Blood." The room seemed to go cold around us. I stared at him, unable to speak, because deep inside me I knew my son was not guessing. And at that very moment, as the evening light faded across the floor and the house grew darker by the minute, I heard something move from the back of the house, from the room my husband had always warned me never to enter. The sound came again, soft, slow, but very clear. It was coming from the back of the house. I looked at my son. He had heard it too. I could see it in his face. He was no longer eating. His small hands were still on the table, but his eyes had shifted toward the corridor. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The whole house felt different again, like the walls were listening. I stood up slowly. "Stay here," I told him. He shook his head immediately and got down from the chair. "No, Mummy." His voice was low but firm. I wanted to insist, but fear was already moving inside me too fast. I did not want him close to that room, yet I also did not want to leave him alone in another part of the house. Everything felt unsafe now. So I held his hand tightly and walked with him toward the corridor. The back of the house had always felt colder than the front, even on hot days. My husband once told me it was because that part did not get enough sunlight. I had believed him then. Now I believed nothing. We stopped in front of the locked room. The room at the back, the one he had forbidden me from entering since we moved into the house. He had always called it storage. He said it was full of old things, building tools, broken furniture, cement bags, and things that could hurt a child. Any time I asked for the key, he brushed me off. "There is nothing there," he would say. But now I knew there was something there. Something heavy enough to stain the air. I looked at the door, then at my son, then back at the door. My hand shook as I reached for the key I had hidden in my wrapper after finding it that morning. Before I could put it into the keyhole, my son spoke. "Mummy." I turned to him. His face had changed. He looked pale, afraid, but also strangely certain. "Do not shout when you see it," he whispered. My heart nearly stopped. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but he only stared at the door. I took a deep breath and pushed the key in. The metal clicked. My fingers almost failed me. Then, slowly, I opened the door. The smell hit me first. Not normal dirt, not dust, not even simple decay. It was something deeper, wrong, heavy. A smell that did not belong in a family house. I covered my nose with one hand and pushed the door wider. The room was dim. The small window was covered from inside with old cloth, so only weak light entered. But it was enough. Enough for me to see the floor. Dark stains everywhere. Not fresh. Old. Layered. soaked deep into the ground as if whatever had happened there had happened more than once. My breathing became uneven. Then I saw the clothes. A small pile near the centre of the room. Children's clothes. Little shirts, shorts, sandals. Some folded, some thrown carelessly, some stiff with dried blood. For a moment, the room started spinning around me. I took one step forward, then another, and then I saw it. One of the shirts, blue, with a small faded cartoon in front. My knees gave way. I knew that shirt. I had washed it before. I had spread it under the sun before. It belonged to my son. I turned at once and looked at him. He was standing at the door, staring into the room quietly. I rushed to him and grabbed both his shoulders. "How is your shirt here?" I cried. "How is this here?" My voice was breaking. My body was shaking, so hard I could barely stand. He looked at me with frightened eyes. Then he said, very softly, "That is why Daddy said I must never come here." My chest tightened so badly it hurt. I pulled him into my arms and held him close. Something was very wrong. Very, very wrong. How could my son's clothes be in that room, soaked with blood? What had my husband done? What had he been hiding? And why did my son seem to know more than he was saying? I wanted to run out of the house immediately. I wanted to take my child and disappear before dark, but my legs refused to move because my mind still wanted answers. I looked around the room again. In one corner was a small table. On it sat a metal bowl, dry but stained. Beside it were pieces of red cloth, a bottle of dark liquid, and a small knife. My stomach turned. There were markings on the floor too, drawn in chalk and something darker. Circles, lines, symbols I did not understand. At that moment, every fear I had been pushing away came together inside me. This was not only crime. This was not only blood money. This was something worse. Something spiritual. Something evil. My husband had not just brought darkness into our home. He had given it a room. I grabbed my son's hand at once. "We are leaving," I said. No more waiting, no more pretending, no more hoping things would explain themselves kindly. But just as we turned, we heard the front door open. My whole body froze. My husband, he was back. His footsteps entered the house slowly, like a man returning to a place he fully owned. Then his voice came, calm, too calm. "So," he said, "you opened it." I turned around. He was standing at the end of the corridor, looking at us. His face was tired, but not surprised. He looked at me, then at our son, then at the room behind us. I stepped in front of my child immediately. "What is this?" I shouted. "What is inside that room? Why is my son's shirt there? What have you been doing?" He sighed deeply, like a man tired of hiding. Then he started walking toward us. "Move away from the door," he said. "No." My voice was louder this time. I had reached the point where fear was no longer enough to keep me silent. "You will tell me the truth today, all of it." He stopped. For the first time, I saw something crack in his face. Not guilt. Not exactly. It was more like defeat. He looked at our son. Then he looked back at me. "I tried to protect this family," he said quietly. "Protect us?" I cried. "With blood? With lies? With midnight fire? With that room?" His jaw tightened. You don't understand what poverty can make a man do. I stared at him, and suddenly I remembered. I remembered those years of suffering, school fees we could not pay, rent hanging over our heads, shame, hunger, debt. I remembered the night I insulted him when there was no money left. The night he told me I had pushed him too far. At the time, I thought it was just anger speaking. Now, I knew better. What did you do? I asked, my voice lower now. Tell me what you did. He looked away for a moment, then back at me. There are men, he said. They help people rise fast. They give money, connections, open doors, contracts, favour. But nothing comes free. My skin went cold. He continued. At first, it was simple. I only carried things for them. I delivered bags, I burned clothes, I kept quiet, then the money started coming. My breath caught. So the blood. Yes, he said. I shook my head slowly, unable to accept it. No, I never wanted it to reach this house, he said quickly. I kept everything outside for as long as I could, but once you enter, they don't let you walk away. My son pressed against me. I could feel him trembling. I held him tighter. And my son's clothes? I asked. My husband closed his eyes briefly. Then he said the words that broke something inside me. They said the final sacrifice must come from the house. I stared at him. I did not understand at first. Then I understood all at once. And when I did, my body turned weak with horror. No, he did not answer. No, I screamed this time. No, you cannot mean that. Tears burst from my eyes. Our son? I cried. Our own child? He looked shattered now, but it no longer mattered. I delayed it, he said. I kept asking for more time. That is why the trips increased. That is why the money increased. They were waiting. I could barely breathe. You animal, I whispered. He flinched. You evil man. I was trying to find another way. There is no other way with evil. My voice echoed through the house. At that exact moment, my son suddenly spoke from behind me. Daddy will die if he does not return it. We both turned to him. His face looked strange again, calm in a way that did not belong to a child. My husband stared at him. Return what? I asked. My son looked toward the room, then toward the visitor's room. The money, he said, and the promise. A deep silence fell. My husband stepped backward slightly. It was the first time I had seen fear in his eyes. What did you say? He asked the child. But my son only repeated it. Return it before night, or they will take their own. My heart was racing wildly now. I did not know how my son knew these things. I did not know whether it was a gift from God, a warning, or something I would never fully understand. But at that moment, I believed him. And I saw that my husband believed him too. He staggered slightly and sat down on the corridor chair like his legs could no longer carry him. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then, finally, he buried his face in his hands. They already started coming for me, he said. That is why I disappeared. I was trying to hide from them, but there is nowhere to hide. I wiped my tears with shaking fingers. Then end it, I said. Today. Right now. He looked up at me. His face was no longer proud, no longer hard, just broken. If I return the money, I lose everything. You have already lost everything, I said. Look at your child. Look at your home. Look at yourself. He looked at our son, then at the room, then back at me. And for the first time in a long time, I think he truly saw what he had become. Without another word, he stood up. He went to the visitor's room and brought out the black bag. Then he came back to the corridor and stared at it for a long moment. His hands were shaking. "Come," he said quietly. I did not want to follow him, but I knew this had to end completely. So I carried my son and followed behind as my husband walked out of the compound with the bag. We walked farther than I expected, past the road behind our street, past the unfinished buildings, past the small bridge near the bush path. The evening sky was growing darker. When we reached a lonely place near the stream, my husband stopped. He placed the bag on the ground. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the wind changed. It rose suddenly and coldly around us, though the night had not fully come. My husband opened the bag and pulled out the bundles of money. "Take it," he said into the air, his voice shaking. "Take everything. I don't want it again." He dropped the money on the ground. Then he fell to his knees. "I return it. I cancel it. I reject it." The wind grew stronger. The money began to scatter. Not like paper blown by ordinary breeze. This was different. It moved wildly, as if invisible hands were dragging it. My son buried his face in my shoulder. I held him tightly and started praying under my breath. My husband was crying now, not quietly. The kind of crying that comes from a man finally seeing the pit he dug for himself. "Forgive me," he shouted. "Forgive me." Then suddenly he screamed. His body jerked forward as if something had struck him hard in the chest. He fell to the ground. I ran toward him, but stopped halfway, because the air around him felt wrong, heavy, dangerous. He was gasping, his hands clawing at the ground. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went still. The wind stopped. The money was gone, all of it. Only the empty bag remained. I stood there frozen, my son in my arms, unable to move. My husband was lying on the ground, still, too still. I waited, hoping he would sit up, hoping he would cough, hoping he would say something, but he did not move again. Tears ran down my face as I slowly stepped closer. I knelt beside him and touched his shoulder. Nothing. His eyes were half open but empty. My husband was gone. I do not know how long I stayed there before I found the strength to stand. I did not scream. I did not faint. I think my soul had gone too far into shock for any of that. I simply carried my child and walked away. I left the empty bag there. I left the stream. I left that cursed path. And by the time I reached home, I knew one thing clearly. That house could never be my home again. The next morning, before sunrise, I packed what I could carry. A few clothes, my son's school things, my documents. Nothing more. I did not enter the room at the back again. I did not wait for explanations from anybody. Later, people would ask questions about my husband. They would say he travelled and never returned. They would whisper different stories: accident, debt, missing person, secret enemies. I let them talk. I had no strength left to explain the kind of evil that can wear the face of a husband and sleep beside you like peace. I took my son and went to stay with my aunt in another town. For many weeks, he barely spoke. Then one morning, while I was washing clothes outside, He came to stand beside me. "Mummy," he said. I looked at him. "Is the bad thing finished?" My throat tightened. I dropped the cloth in my hand and pulled him close. "Yes," I whispered, though tears had already filled my eyes. "It is finished." And by the mercy of God, it truly was. My son never spoke strangely again after that. The fear that used to sit in his eyes slowly disappeared. He started laughing like a child again, playing, asking questions, fighting sleep, complaining about food, living. And me? I changed too. I learned that not every blessing is from God. I learned that money can enter a house and remove the soul from it. I learned that silence may keep peace for a while, but truth is what saves. Many times, I still wake at night remembering the smell of smoke, the sound of his voice, the blood on those clothes, the room at the back, and that final evening by the stream. I remember the man I married, and the man he became. Sometimes I ask myself whether there was a point where he could still have turned back, a point where things were not yet too dark. Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. But one thing I know for sure is this. The day evil entered my husband's heart, it did not come dressed like evil. It came dressed like help, like breakthrough, like quick answers to long suffering. And that is how it destroys people, quietly, little by little, until the house is full of money and empty of peace.